And I think this leads us to the third choice too, because the third critical choice that I made was to build trust.
Mhm.
First, around building trust in myself. I mean,
Mhm.
let's just, I had like no trust in myself. So I had to build trust in myself first and then inspire the trust of others. And I think what you were just saying around two-way agreements, even as a part of you building, I'm putting words in your mouth, but building trust in yourself. But let's just explore this a little bit. Well, how about this? Would you share a time where you needed to build trust in yourself? And it could be expanding on what you just shared with us or giving us another example where you, Carlie, had to build trust in yourself.
Yeah, I think there's two kind of to piggyback what I was just
Yeah.
mentioning of um it did take some trial and error. um and I think the first step to building trust with yourself is to really be able to define like what you want, or really
Mhm.
define what value system you want to live by. Because if you don't do that, like you're not there's no like measuring there's no measurement, right? So um I think that, when I first was here, I was younger, but um everything's exciting and you're just kind of going with the flow and like seeing, well, at least I was like seeing what was like what happened, like what the environment was like, um and kind of through some of those experiences, which I'm glad that I did have, I was kind of like, okay, like this is like not so great for me, or this really isn't aligning, or this really isn't like helping where I want to go. So, and eventually it got to the point, and I think this is where the trust building happened was, you know, I want to be here, but my actions are only going to allow me to be like, I want to be at level 10 and my actions are only allowing me to be at level 7. And
Mhm.
so, I think recognizing that was a huge piece for my building trust in myself, and then finding those small actionable things that can help eliminate those, but then also add more value to your life. And that's kind of what I found. And once I saw that return on the investment, I was like, oh, like this is way better. Like this is, and I feel like I'm able to be where I want to be and go where I want to go because of that. And so that kind of aligned with building trust in, myself professionally, because I then had the opportunity to be in the role that I am now instead of where I started. But I don't think without my personal, like the trust in myself, I would have been comfortable to be like, I can do that. Like, I know I can do this job, and I know like I'm the right person for it, because I can clearly sit in front of the people that I had to sit in front of and be like, these are my values and this is exactly what I'm going to do. And so 2 years later, I think that professionally we've come almost all the way around to, what those initial conversations were. But I think that started just individually. And, as much as I think culturally work is super important to us, you know, you, who you are defines how you operate in that space. And without understanding that, I think that's where some of like the murky waters may come, or the challenges in a leadership or something, something along those lines. So, as much as I think professionally I benefited from the building trust in that space, I think it started with my personal
With you.
trust. Yeah.
And isn't that a core part of Bulldog Bill in working with student athletes on identifying their value system? And I have that right because I remember
Yeah,
that really driving you and saying, "Hey, it starts with you." And
it
so
is.
have you been able to see this kind of manifest itself with these student athletes that you're helping to guide?
Yeah, so that's definitely a core part of, or core, maybe a baseline would probably be a better
Baseline.
word. So in a lot of what we talk about, whether it's in our leadership development or it's in our professional development, is that idea of, you have to sit here and tell me what code you want to live by or what value system you want to live by, because that's the only way that I can help you. If you value interpersonal relationships, I don't know that, maybe a fully remote role is right for you right now.
Right.
That doesn't necessarily mean that it's not ever going to be, because life changes and evolves, and that's part of the enduring success, is that continuation of defining that.
Yeah.
But at that moment, right when you're right when you're done being part of a team, or right when you are freshly graduated and you don't have that fun college environment anymore, if you're going to sit there and say, I value interpersonal communication and connection, well, then we need to like really go off of that, because now you're not only going to get into like a value disalignment, but now we have all these other layers of athlete identity and kind of the post playing mental health challenges that a
Mm.
lot of student athletes feel, and really trying to, everyone's going to feel that at some point, but to mitigate what that looks like as much as we can try, as well as giving tools and a baseline to start from, so when they do experience that like personal discourse, they at least
Mhm.
have some tools, and like, okay, well, I said that my values were this, where is this not present in my life, or have my values changed a little bit, and that's okay
Yeah.
too. So being able to provide those skills and even the language of like, well, clearly this is why you and so might be having some sort of like miscommunication, is because
Mhm.
that's important to them, it's not important to you,
Yeah.
so just some of those like really, I think, impactful conversations, and kind of setting the tone of the importance of that. And I think we've seen that a lot in when they're looking for positions or roles. That's something that I kind of always go back to is, what about this is, at the very minimum, if they don't have it in their company statement, like we need to really think about that. Or, not to say that's not the right place, but now you need to ask specifically about that because you've identified it as important. And so that,
Yeah, right.
yeah, that goes into the, kind of advocacy and the trust building thing. Like this is what I know is important. And so I need to trust that I can ask and get the response that is going to be best for me.
Mhm. And it helps maybe be a compass if I'm networking with people, if I'm
Mhm.
interviewing, it gives me an internal personal compass to actually know where to go. Okay, I'm going to take us a step back really quick because I want to grab something before I ask you another question. When you were talking about building trust in yourself and actually that inspires the trust of others, you said making small actions, taking small actions. Do you remember any of the small actions that you took? And or are there any that you take today? Just small
Mhm.
actions.
Yeah.
I know.
Um,
I'm making you think here again.
I think that I think in the pro- previously, one of the small actions was probably I don't know. I think like more recently, one of
Yeah.
my trust building small actions would probably be um, continuing to kind of check in with myself, because I've identified previously like I can get very ahead and like wrapped up in
Mhm.
what I'm doing, or, kind of what's going on, which is great because that's a level of commitment, right? But at the same time, I would always, experience this big like fall off. So it was kind of always like an ebb and like high, low, high, low, high, low of just like energy level. And so I think that now I'm much more cognizant of like, okay, there's been a lot going on, and that's great. Like I'm somebody that needs to be busy and I thrive in kind of like organized chaos. Um, but also like making sure that I'm not wasting kind of recharge time in an environment that's not going to like recharge me, number one, or it's not going to add any sort of like value, if that makes sense. So
It does.
instead of like maybe going out on, a weeknight or whatever, it's like just taking that little extra time to go on a walk, or maybe going on a walk and then going. So there's kind of like a better balance. Um,
Mhm.
that's something that I've really kind of in the last probably year and a half or so, like been a lot more cognizant of.
Great. And we could all take that.
Yeah.
Like check in with
Yeah.
yourself, like literally a moment. I think that's a small action that if you really do it, can change the trajectory of your day and then your week and then whatever. So thank you for that. All right, I'm going to keep going with trust though. And I know we need to move forward, but I want to keep going here. How do you inspire the trust of others?
My biggest way of doing that is just being consistent and showing up. And I think when people know exactly what they're going to get from you, it's a lot easier for them to trust you. And we all have bad days, and we all have, days that we're off, or we don't have that like crazy amount of energy or charisma or whatever you want to call it. But I think on a consistent basis, to just know that, I'm going to Carlie, and like, this is what I'm going to get. And so, I think that the consistency piece, and then, following through and following up with what you say. And that was something that I kind of learned that is harder for some than others, and I don't know if that's because there's a level of fear when you say you're going to do something and you don't exactly know how you're going to do it, but it's possible. And then some people just don't do it. But for me, and I think that goes back to my parents, I said I have the best support system you could dream of. And that's something that my parents always kind of have told us. And we always saw like embodied was like, just show up. Even when you might not like 100% feel like it, there's so much power in just being present for people that expect you to be their number one and want you to be there. And sometimes when you don't want to do something and you do it, you end up being re-energized through that experience.
Mm-hmm.
So I think really just the consistency point and sharing what your values are with other people. And when you're able to do that, they know, again, like they know exactly what they're going to get from you. And my friends always give me a hard time. Like, I've avoided telling you this because I know you're going to tell me the truth. And but they know that, and so that there's a point of trust, and a point of trust that it's coming from a place of love and a place of like, I don't want you to feel like this, so I'm telling you what I see from my perspective. But also to be able to hear those things in reverse, I think is really important. And so having people that will tell you the truth, just as much as I try to be a truth teller, is just as important.
You show up, and you show up consistently. There is a thing, if you think about inspiring trust, and how we inspire trust, demonstrating reliability, the repeated experience of expectations set, expectations met. But when you just, and I'm going to say this because I'm going to share this clip with some of the teams that I work with, because I want to tie this together here. What you just talked about, I think we all have a personal brand, whether we're cognizant of it or not. Mm-hmm. We have a personal brand. And when we think about expectations, what you just so beautifully articulated is implicit expectations. What is it like to work with or collaborate with Carlie? Like or be a friend? Like, what can I expect? What can I expect from Carlie? What is the experience? And you're deliberate, you're purposeful, and you're consistent. Part of your personal brand, you've laid that out there. And I think that I know that is a driving force to inspiring trust, both personally and professionally. So thank you for that story. And I'm going to share it. I'm going to share this one specifically. Thank you for joining me for our Choose and Become interview series. You could find this episode and others at trishkendall.com. Just go to trishkendall.com/choose-become-interview-series. Or if you have a question or just want to leave a comment, email me, trish@trishkendall.com.